folks. Tony Howard here with Astrology University, and I'd like to invite you to our summit coming up this weekend, July 21st and 22nd. It's called the Fresh Voices in Astrology Summit, and we have 13 speakers presenting over a wide array of topics over 2 days, so I hope you can attend. And I have Chad Harris, one of our speakers, with me today to tell you a little bit about what he's going to share at the summit. So hello, Chad. Thanks for joining us.
Hi, Tony. It's really wonderful to be with you.
Awesome. Thanks for taking time out. So can you tell folks a little bit about what your astrological approach is and where you're from?
Sure. I'm originally from Florida. I live in San Francisco, California. And yeah, my approach to astrology is based in an archetypal perspective, and it's pretty strictly oriented around the planets. And the way I recognize that is that the planets themselves correspond or relate to archetypal principles that are transcendent to the human experience that ultimately we are participating in. Your natal chart represents the complexes that you were born into, and the archetypal dynamics that correspond to those relationships are the kind of correlate to the structure of one's psyche and how one is participating in those archetypal complexes.
Cool. And for people who don't know what an archetype is, how would you describe that for folks?
Yeah, that's a great question.
An archetype. I mean, I know that we could write a whole essay on that, right? but you know, if you could do it in a sentence or two in a nutshell.
Sure. Probably the simplest way to understand it is like the principle of beauty is an archetype. So the principle of beauty transcends everything that is beautiful. But like, let's say a flower is participating in the principle of beauty, but it is not beauty itself. As the flower will grow and die, it will not be beautiful as it was, but it participated in that experience of beauty throughout its life. And what we recognize in the birth chart is that, per se, the planet Venus has a specific relationship to the archetype of beauty. And where Venus is in your natal chart will correspond to how you relate to the principle of beauty, how you bring beauty into your life, what attracts you, what you find beautiful. You can find correlations to where Venus is in your chart relative to other planets as to what your orientation to that principle is.
Perfect. That's like one of the best explanations I've heard. I love that. So I think that'll be really clear for folks. So Chad, your talk is called "What is Astrology Designed to Do?" which is a question I think about every day, I think. So I love this topic. But tell us what your approach to that question is going to be.
Sure. I made that title to be as inviting as possible to as many participants as could be. But I also, did it partly because of a desire to be slightly provocative in the sense of, is it designed to do anything? Or if you're educated in our modern worldview, the basic cosmological understanding is that the universe is mechanistic and that it doesn't have meaning and purpose per se at all, and that it is basically random accidents of evolutionary processes that have somehow accidentally created a highly intelligent, meaning-seeking species, but which doesn't make a lot of sense, but yet it is the predominant worldview. So the astrological perspective, in my understanding, is actually designed to help us reflect on who we are as a self-reflective practice. It can help us understand the deeper interiority of who we are and ultimately come in contact with the shadow dimensions of who we are, because it is a map, in essence, of all of the totality of our being. And in many aspects, the shadow is there. Parts of ourselves that we don't recognize as ourselves, or where we repress about ourselves, are actually visible in the natal chart. And so I believe that we can come into a new relationship with the depth of our own being by the study of one's natal chart and transits.
Beautiful. So you're going to be talking about that as well. Before we started this recording, you and I were talking a little bit about your interest in quantum mechanics. And are you going to be talking a little bit about that in your talk this weekend, or no?
I'll probably bring it in a little bit because it actually has important relevance to our understanding of reality today. Back before in physics and old modern science, the traditional understanding was that the universe is a mechanistic process and that there is a division between the subjective self and an objective world. And what quantum mechanics has realized and rendered for us is that that separation doesn't actually exist in any absolute way in the way that we perceived it to be prior to quantum mechanics. And when I say that, what it says is that the universe is indeterminate at its core processes, and it responds to our questioning. So as we ask for a question, it responds in a way that is relative to our the question that we ask. Specific example, light is both particle and wave, but if you look for particle, you see particle. But if you look for wave, you see wave. And so, but you can't see both at the same time. And so the universe has this indeterminate dimension at its core, and that it reveals itself in relationship to the way that we participate in it. So rather than the universe being an objective phenomenon physically, and that we're separate from it as in an observational place, quantum mechanics says, no, you are a part of the universe, you're a participant, and the way that you observe is actually a participation. It's not, the observation, the universe reveals itself specifically to the way that you are observing it. So we're not actually separate, we're participants. And what's beautiful about that understanding with quantum physics is that the astrological perspective does it on the macro scale. We're not separate from the movements of the planets, and actually they are reflections of the deepest interiority of who we are. They're not separate. So then what we can recognize is that we're not separate from the immanent material world, and we're not separate from the largest patterns in nature that we're aware of, which are the planetary cycles. So I feel as though there's this real commensurate understanding, with our best science and the astrological worldview, that ultimately they render us as participants and in a new relationship, ultimately, that you can only really understand if you go back through the evolution of consciousness, which we will do very briefly at the beginning of my talk to basically explore like how astrology was omens in the ancient history, and then the initial first birth charts emerged in the axial era, and then we went into an eclipse where astrology wasn't considered valid at all, completely marginalized by the scientific method. And now it is emerging in a new form, and a large important part of that is the discovery of the three outer planets. They correspond to the depth of the human psyche that actually has emerged in the last 400 or 500 years as astrology was eclipsed by the modern era. So there's this really interesting relationship between the ascent of the modern individual identity and the suppression of the astrological perspective, and now the potential to recover it in a new form with the understanding of the outer planets and how they reflect the deep parts of the depth of the psyche that wasn't possible before this evolution took place in the last 400 or 500 years.
Yeah, and it feels like we're in process with that right now too as an astrological community, because as that reemergence happens and the interest grows, we're seeing a revisiting of all that we've done before. And not everybody is putting it, not every astrologer is putting it into the context that we're talking about right now, which I think is such a healing context and message to consider, that you're a participant. Like that alone, it can change everything for a person, right? I know we talked before, but you and I have that same intention working with clients of wanting to empower people and basically to see what you were just describing, because that can be a shift that really changes someone's life. So
yeah, absolutely. Totally agree with
that. Awesome. So I'm really excited that you've joined us and that you're going to be sharing some of your wisdom with folks and at the summit. So thanks for taking time out to talk with us today, Chad.
Thank you, Tony, and I'm really honored to be a part of it. And thank you for putting it together.
Yeah, and if you'd like to join us, folks, the website is freshvoicesinastrology.com, and you can actually sign in to watch the conference for free this weekend. All you have to do is pop in your email address once you visit the website, and you'll get the instructions for how to watch the summit all weekend long. So for each day, the recordings will be posted for 24 hours. So you'll have a total of 48 hours to watch the summit. And we start at 9 a.m. on Saturday Pacific time. And we'll finish up at 8 p.m. on Sunday night Pacific time. We do have a late lecture on Saturday, especially designed to reach you folks in Australia. That starts at 8:15 Pacific, which I think is somewhere around midday for you. Definitely check it out. And I hope you can join us. And we will see you soon. And thanks again for joining us, Chad.
Thank you, Tony. Really excited. Looking forward to it.
All right. Take care, folks.